This is the third part of today's talk on forbidden knowledge. So if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2 of Forbidden Knowledge on either my Instagram or my YouTube, then you could start at episode 1. Otherwise, you're not going to know where I am. But then again, you're already watching this. Maybe you want to continue. So I'm going to continue to talk to you about forbidden knowledge, and the main topic is smoke screens, which is how you create so much confusion in the human mind that humans don't know right hand from left hand. That was a funny thing, when I was a child. Strangely, my mom and my dad never taught me right hand and left hand. They didn't. I remember being in about second grade, and the kids seemed to know right hand and left hand, but I didn't know what my right hand and my left hand was. How did I get to be 7 years old and not know left hand and right hand? It wasn't on my mom's curriculum, and apparently I didn't learn it. Well, I did move from school to school quite a bit when I was very young. By the time of grade 2, that was my... Well, I went to like a nursery school, I'm told. I don't remember that. Then I went to a kindergarten. Then I went to a grade 1. And then in grade 1 we moved, so I went to another school for grade 1. And then we moved again, and I went to another school for grade 1. And then we moved again, and I went to another school for the start of grade 2. So by 7 years of age, I'd been to quite a few schools, and somehow, out of all those schools, I'd not learned right hand and left hand. And I remember we were learning how to tell clock time. They took a paper pie plate and put paper hands on it, and you could turn the hands to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, etc. And that's how we learned to tell time. We had to learn the numbers somehow. I was told by my mom that she taught me colors. She got jujubes, those little gelatin candies that are multicolors. And what she did was she would pick one up and she would ask me, "What color is it?" And if I guessed right, I got to eat the candy. If I guessed wrong, she ate the candy. Apparently it was very effective. I did learn colors, but we didn't get right hand and left hand. We're talking about smoke screens and, our weird science that we're force-fed through high school, and if you take it at college or university, you're force-fed it there as well. And we were talking about how we didn't really have a course in quantum biology or quantum chemistry, but it was a very interesting subject that made all the scientists scratch their head in quantum physics because they couldn't figure out how light could act like waves or particles depending upon which double slit experiment you were doing. Then there were the thought experiments about a cat. Something about if the cat was in a box and there was a gun in the box, and if a quantum particle or something, or a light beam or something, hit the box, it would cause the gun to fire or not. And the only way you could tell if the cat was dead is that you had to open up the box. A very strange cat experiment. I can't remember the details, but it was a thought experiment, and somehow that was related to quantum physics. So, we don't have a real solid background in science, even though people say science says. People who say that usually aren't scientists. They say science says, even though in 7th grade we were taught by our first science teacher that there was a scientific method, and basically you have scientific theories, and you have the test of the theory. Anyway, the conclusion from that was science is always open to growing and changing. It's not fixed and dilated, even though people say, well, I looked it up on Google and science says. It's like people playing Simon Says when they were in 2nd grade. Simon says, jump right. Jump right, you jumped right. Oh, Simon didn't say that. You're out of the game. So, we don't have a good background. But, when it comes to immune systems, I was talking about bird immune systems and how seagulls will eat garbage at the dump. Garbage that we got anywhere near, we would start retching from the stench. Yet seagulls eat it and they don't get sick. And seagulls shit on their, wherever they're walking, and they walk through their own shit. They've got fantastic immune systems, and humans don't. We have to get flu vaccines that usually don't stop you from getting the flu. And even though they have flu vaccine, because flu's a virus, they don't have a common cold vaccine, because common cold is a virus too, but they don't have one for that. But all of a sudden, they've invented this COVID-19 coronavirus, which is related to the common cold, SARS, which was some other kind of horrible virus, and HIV, some other kind of horrible virus that doesn't have a cure. And somehow this COVID-19 that's made up of these 3 viruses, well, they found it in a bat in a meat market in China. When it came to HIV, when that was first announced as being a horrible viral disease, they said, we think it comes from green monkeys in Africa. We think people were either having sex with green monkeys, eating green monkeys, or maybe a mosquito bit a green monkey that had HIV and then bit a human, or what does it do, a mosquito bite, bit a human, and it got transferred somehow. And somehow the strain of HIV that was found predominantly in Africa was different from the strain found in the rest of the world. And even though rich people or immigrants travel from Africa to other parts of the world, this one strain of HIV is still in Africa and Haiti, maybe in Haiti, because they said that's where there was a big outbreak and epidemic of it, in Haiti and Africa, and then there's different strains that were in other countries. But they said it came from green monkeys, and then, I came across this article on the internet many years later that said there was this guy who was working for the U.S. Army at Fort Detrick, Maryland, where they do work on bioweapons, and Henry Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State for President Ford and President Nixon, signed on to this Agenda 21 or something about creating bioweapons to kill off the population of Africa. And at Fort Detrick, they were working on a sheep virus called Visna, and it seemed like they were crossing it with some other virus, maybe a leukemia virus, and somehow that virus got into the hands of the French at the Pasteur Institute, and or vice versa. Maybe the Pasteur Institute had this virus and sent it to Fort Detrick. The details were muddy, and there was a great big lawsuit about who discovered HIV first. Because, even the national governments got involved because it was going to be an enormous amount of money, because if you discovered this virus, the test for HIV had a royalty on it. And if you discovered this particular virus, then every time there was an HIV test, someone is going to get a nice payment every single test. And that's kind of the way it is with COVID-19. I'm going to figure that every time there's a test, that somebody makes a profit, and maybe there's a royalty that goes to whoever patented this virus. Some people say that the COVID-19 virus was patented long before it seemed to appear in the public, if the virus is real or not, because I still question whether these viruses are real. It's just a smokescreen, you know. Once you go down this, trying to investigate the history of how this virus came about, then you go down another different rabbit hole, or, you know, are viruses real or not? Are they just like, you're told so many times that viruses are real that you come to just keep calling these things viruses because people keep calling them viruses. But, you know, I've never been in a lab where we worked with viruses. Even when I was at university taking biology, we didn't work with viruses. But we were told in all kinds of textbooks that there were viruses. And I remember we did a project, I think it was in grade 6, on common cold, and we had a picture of what a virus looked like and how it injected itself into a human cell to infect the cell. So we drew pictures of this capsid because we copied it out of this textbook for our project in 6th grade, and that's how we learned about the common cold and how it worked. But no one, you know, in 6th grade showed us a laboratory where they were working with viruses. We never had a film. That's what we called films in those days, a film. We never had a film on viruses. We just had some textbook in the school library that gave us this picture, and we were told, like, by the textbook that that was what reality was. So, you know, when I look back at my science education, there was a lot of books that, you know, they were published by school publishers. And last week I made a talk, maybe I made some comment somewhere about Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, you know, Epstein, the one that was arrested because apparently he had an island in close to St. Thomas in the Caribbean where supposedly they were taking underage girls and bringing in celebrities from President Clinton to President Trump to famous actors, and Prince Andrew of England. They would bring them there and they'd have great parties, and some people say that they were having sex with underage girls, but you know, we don't have films of it or anything. We don't have films, just a lot of talk. Anyways, it was put on in the mainstream news that Epstein was caught and was put in jail. And then, you know, a day or two later, we were told Epstein was found dead, suicide, inside this jail cell that had a suicide watch, you know, jail guards and closed-circuit TVs, but he still managed to die. And then sometime later, I saw a news article, not on the mainstream television news, but, you know, on one of these internet news reports, that Jeffrey Epstein's enormous bank accounts with millions of dollars in them before he was arrested and put in jail and before he was dead, all of a sudden they were emptied of all the money. And we were told Epstein was dead, but I don't believe that Epstein was dead. I believe he was released. And I'm not even sure that Epstein was a real person. He might have just been an actor playing a character called Epstein, because I don't trust anything these days, and it's part of my smokescreen routine to keep looking down rabbit holes to say, is this true or is this a lie that they built a huge story behind? You know, like the story of viruses and the story of immune systems and the story of Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, who was a billionaire who owned all kinds of newspapers, and he owned a bunch of publishing companies that published books that were told were for students at school.